So how does somebody go from earning, pennies to commanding billions? And maybe even more importantly, how do you lose all of that and then come back even stronger? Well, today we're going to dig into the key lessons from Femi Otedola's book, Making It Big, to get some answers. Let's get right into it.
This quote right here from the president of the African Development Bank, it really just sets the perfect stage. This isn't your typical rags to riches tale. Nope. This is a raw, super honest story about hitting absolute rock bottom and then engineering one of the most incredible comebacks you'll ever hear about. That's the journey we're going to unpack. Okay, so where does a journey like this even start? Well, the first part of the book is called In the Beginning, and it all kicks off with this really simple but honestly super powerful idea. You've got to start small.
So before all the oil tankers, before the multi-million-dollar deals, what do you think a future billionaire's very first business was? Take a guess. The answer is probably going to surprise you. It all started when he was just a little kid. And when I say little, I mean, how old do you think?
7. Yeah, you heard that right, just 7 years old. I mean, think about that. While most of us were, learning to ride a bike or something, he was already getting a masterclass in the fundamentals of business. So, what was he selling? Manicures. That's right. He saw a business opportunity right there in his family's own living room. Whenever guests would come over, he'd offer to clean and trim their fingernails for a small fee. He even had a little invoice and receipt book. How cool is that? It was so simple, so direct, and it created value for someone right then and there. And his first ever payment for this little business? It was about 20 kobo, which is basically just a few cents. I mean, just stop and think about that contrast for a second. From 20 kobo to a multi-billion-dollar net worth. Isn't that incredible? It's just such a powerful reminder that every single massive enterprise has a tiny, tiny starting point. So, okay, the really crucial part here is what he learned from all this. Lesson 1, start as early as you can. He actually writes that there was always a market for him because, hey, nails are always going to grow, right? Lesson 2, create value right now. He didn't wait for some perfect business plan or a bunch of seed funding. He just saw a simple need and he filled it. And third, you've got to nurture that business sense. His parents really encouraged him, and that support, that was absolutely priceless.
All right, so let's fast forward a bit. Let's see how that early business hustle helped him spot a much bigger opportunity as an adult. One that was hiding inside a financial market that was, fundamentally broken. So back in the early 90s in Nigeria, you had these things called wonderbacks, and they were pretty much just Ponzi schemes. They'd promise these insane, unbelievable returns, people would pour their money in, and then, poof, the whole thing would collapse. What Otedola saw all this chaos and had a light bulb moment. He realized, wait a minute, people clearly need access to cash, and they need it fast. But what they really need is a reliable, trustworthy way to get it. So that's when he founded Centerforce Ltd. He basically took a really bad, broken idea and cleaned it up.
And wow, did it work. The results speak for themselves. He started small again, of course, with just 2 employees. But in only 2 years, the company grew by 10 times, both in staff and in capital. He basically proved that there was this massive, untapped demand for an honest version of a bad idea.
But here's the thing. Centerforce wasn't the end game. Not even close. It was the crucial stepping stone. The success and, the money from that business gave him the perfect foundation to jump into the diesel market with his next company, Xenon Petroleum. And that is where he would make his first $1 billion. It was like one success was just fueling the next one. But just when he reached the top, things took a very, very dramatic turn. And this right here brings us to what I think is the most powerful part of the entire book. See, it's not just about the climb to the top. It's about the fall, the crash, and the absolutely incredible rebirth that came after. He calls it the crucible of failure. I mean, look, you can see it right here in his own table of contents. Section 4 is literally titled Collapse and Rebirth. He dedicates a huge chunk of his story to these lessons, things like recognize your limits, cut your losses, and master the art of reinvention. He doesn't try to hide his failures at all. He puts them right there front and center for everyone to see. And honestly, that's what makes this story so compelling. Just like Arun Maote says here, that kind of honesty is, it's pretty rare. Otedola gets into the nitty-gritty of how global market forces and, his own decisions led to him losing everything. We're talking about a debt of over $1 billion.
But here's the key. He came to see that massive collapse not as the end of his story,
but as his most important education. It was the thing that taught him about true resilience, about humility, and about that critical skill of reinvention. It's what allowed him to pivot, to rebuild, and in the end to actually surpass the success he had before.
So after we've seen the rise, the fall, and the rebirth, what are the big takeaways? What can we learn from all this? Let's try and boil it all down into what we can call the Otedola playbook. All right, here are the core principles. First, you've got to start small. Don't look down on those humble beginnings, like that 20 kobo manicure business. Second, spot the gap. Find a broken model and figure out how to fix it, just like he did with Centriforce. Third, grow steadily. Master the basics before you try to scale up. Fourth, and this one is so important, embrace rebirth. You have to see failure not as an ending, but as a really, really powerful teacher. And finally, you've got to stay authentic to who you are.
You know, Otedola wraps up his introduction with this really powerful thought. He says, society typically builds a mold that expects people to fit into. Whatever I have been and whatever I may become, I look back and say, thank God I did not fit into the mold. So that leaves us with one final big question for you to think about. What mold in your own life or your own career do you need to break?
Get your copy of the book, link in the description.